We've officially seen at least 7 games from every NBA team and had time to dissect and analyze all 30 teams. We finally reached a point where I can do one of my favorite things to start a new regular season, and that's ranking every team based on their performance through 2 weeks. We're going to use a tier list to rank every team in specific categories and determine which teams are overperforming, which teams are underperforming, and which teams are just completely and utterly awful. But before we get started, go ahead and like this video and subscribe for more NBA videos just like this one. Without further ado, let's get started. We're going to start off by talking about the teams at the bottom of their conference that have no chance at making the play-in and whose fans have little to nothing to look forward to when watching their team. So in the bottom of the barrel tier, I have Washington, Utah, Portland, and Charlotte. All 4 of these teams have had their ups, but mostly downs to start this season. They've all gotten blown out, lost a heartbreaker, and had young players look really bad. The prime example of this is Washington, who I can confidently say will be the worst team in the league. They have almost nothing to look forward to on a nightly basis, other than Kyle Kuzma and Jordan Poole chucking up 35 shots a game. I honestly feel bad for you Wizards fans, because you're going to be a bottom 5 team for at least the next 2 seasons before hopefully drafting someone who can take this franchise from mediocrity and take it to consistent playoff appearances. Coming into the season, I wasn't a big fan of the Jazz because their talent pool just wasn't as strong as the rest of the teams in the West. And through 9 games, the Jazz are 2-7, and there's not much light at the end of the tunnel for this team. Lauri Markkanen is a solid number 1 option, but he's never going to be that guy that takes a team to the playoffs. Jordan Clarkson and Colin Sexton were supposed to be microwaves, guys who could get hot at any given moment. But the microwave must not be plugged in yet, because both guys are not having a great start to the season, particularly Jordan Clarkson, who's putting up 15 points on 15 shots a night. What I'd like to see more from this Utah team is Will Hardy utilizing his young players and allowing them to learn and grow, not just during practice, but during the games. As for the Blazers, this is kind of where we expected them to be. Obviously, the big storyline is Scoot Henderson struggling to find his footing so far in his NBA career, but once he adjusts to NBA pace, he's going to thrive. I'm really loving what I see from Shaedon Sharpe, who has developed into a solid 20-point per game scorer much faster than I anticipated. His athleticism is otherworldly, and his shot is starting to develop, which is a scary sight for opposing teams. What I like most about this team is their mixture of young guys like Henderson and Sharpe, and of veterans like Malcolm Brogdon and Jeremy Grant, who can develop these young stars while putting up 18 a game. It's an interesting team, one that can put up a fight on any given night, but I don't expect anything more than 25 to 30 wins from this team. And lastly, there's Charlotte, who have a very big problem that keeps me from putting them a tier above those 3 terrible teams. And that problem is 3-point shooting. There's no explanation you can give me as to why LaMelo Ball and Terry Rozier are taking over 6 threes a game, especially when both are shooting well below league average. And then you have PJ Washington, who's taking 4 threes a game for some reason, Theo Maledon, who's taking 3 threes a game, and JT Thor, who takes 2 threes a game. These 3 guys should not be near the top of your list of 3-point shooters, but I guess this is a reason why this team sucks. The only bright spots on this team are Gordon Hayward, who is increasing his trade value with every game he plays, and Brandon Miller, who looks much better so far into his NBA career than I expected. There's not much to say about this team other than their front office are probably the only people on earth that believe this team can make the playoffs, and once they realize their team sucks, it'll be interesting to see where these veterans are traded. The next tier is the I expected more from you, but I'm not shocked you're here tier, which consists of only 1 team, and that's the Detroit Pistons. Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren have looked incredible so far to start the season, and it looks like Marcus Sasser is quickly becoming a hidden gem off the bench. But their young talent just hasn't developed as quickly as Detroit would have liked. Jaden Ivey has his flashes, but he's still a very raw talent. Killian Hayes is a great effort guy, but his offense is almost to 0. And the Pistons took a shot on James Wiseman, and he's getting DMP'd almost every night. This team is going to be dangerous in 3 to 5 years. But for now, expect them to be the team that puts up a fight against the contenders, but ultimately falls short in close games. Next, we have the I don't know whether you're going to be good or bad on any given night tier, and it's held by the Spurs and the Bulls. I'm sure you're tired of hearing about Victor Wembanyama, so I'm going to focus on the pieces surrounding him for this portion of Spurs talk. What stands out the most about this team is their lack of guard play. The Spurs entered the season with Jeremy Sohan running the starting point guard position, and I think this team needs to realize that Sohan just doesn't have the skill set of a point guard, especially one that would work with a generational talent. Instead, I think the Spurs should start Trey Jones, a straight playmaker who can get the ball to developing stars. This is a young team, so I expect some inconsistency from their top guys. But even then, Devin Vassell looks great alongside Victor, and guys like Zach Collins are becoming extremely valuable in their role. But a team I wouldn't expect inconsistency from is the Bulls. This team has 3 former All-Stars, a solid defensive guard, a solid scoring guard, and an okay bench. Some nights they come out and get solid wins over the Pacers and the Raptors, but other nights they lose by double digits to the Pistons. I find this team almost unwatchable. There's no future with this core, and it's very frustrating to watch their style of basketball, because there's no excuse as to why this team is as bad as they are. I truly hope they're well below 500 at the trade deadline, so they can trade away Zach LaVine and not ruin his prime on such a below-average team. The next tier is the I have no idea how we got here tier, headlined by the Nets, the Magic, and the Rockets. The Nets found a great scoring option in Cam Thomas and didn't lose any pieces from a team that was not too bad at the end of last season. They have solid wins over the Clippers and the Heat, and their losses are from some of the best teams in the NBA. I have a feeling this is going to be the team that beats the teams they should and loses to the teams that are objectively better than them. So don't be surprised if this team sneaks into a 7th or 8th seed, then gets absolutely smoked in the playoffs. As for the Magic, they have a young developing core that we didn't expect too much from, but I'm shocked to see them as high as a 6th seed if the season were to end today. They have a really good win against the Lakers and some bad double-digit losses against the Mavericks and the Clippers. But all of this is with Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero struggling with their shot to start the season. So just imagine how great this team will be when their 2 stars start to find their footing this season. While I don't think this team will be a top 6 seed to finish the season, I could definitely see them taking a game or 2 off the top seed in the playoffs. But the one team I could see keeping up their early season success is the Rockets. While their most recent wins were against the Hornets and the De'Aaron Fox-less Kings twice, I'm a huge fan of Alperen Şengün and his ability to run the offense. Şengün reminds me a lot of a mini Jokic, solely because he's great at finding the open guys and getting easy shots for Jabari Smith Jr. and Jalen Green. And the addition of proven veterans Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks and Ime Udoka's coaching must have done something to this team that looked dysfunctional just 8 months ago. Now I'm seeing a lot of improvement, specifically on the offensive side of the ball, and I'm actually kind of excited to watch this team on a nightly basis. The next tier is the I forgot you existed tier, which consists of one team only, the Toronto Raptors. I love the addition of Dennis Schroeder, who looks to have rejuvenated his career in Toronto, and this team is finally given the keys to Scotty Barnes, who is quietly averaging a 21, 10, and 6. But being quiet seems to be a specialty of this Toronto team. I feel like I've seen nothing about this Raptors team on social media or on TV. They're just quietly an average team that's okay on offense and excels on defense. And I think that's going to be their identity for the season, unless they decide to trade one of Pascal Siakam or OG Anunoby, which, for the sake of excitement for this franchise, I hope they do. Next up is the we've been completely underperforming, but can blame it on the first 2 weeks of the season crowd, which consists of the Grizzlies, the Lakers, the Clippers, the Kings, the Cavaliers, the Heat, and the Knicks. There's a lot of teams there, so I'm just going to go through a quick summary of what I've seen so far. The Grizzlies are desperately missing Ja and his 25 points a game. While Desmond Bane's numbers look good, he's not fit to be a number 1 option, and as a result, the Grizzlies only have 1 win. They're also missing Steven Adams and Brandon Clark, and their wing depth is atrocious. We're all pretty much just waiting on Ja to come back, but until then, it would be a win if the Grizzlies go 10-15 through the first 25 games. The Lakers have been blessed with the longevity and dominance of LeBron James, especially this season, as he's looking like one of the 10 best players in the league again. Unfortunately, AD already got hurt because he's playing an absurd amount of minutes every night, Austin Reeves is not getting the ball enough, and when he does, he's looking a little disappointing, and they have so many good players that Darvin Ham now has to make a decision on who to play every night, and that hasn't really been going well so far. We're going to see how this team ends the season, but so far, it's looked kind of rough. I've spoken about the Clippers so many times this season that I'm already sick of James Harden in LA. All I'm going to say is that the Clippers gave up depth, which was one of their most valuable pieces, for a past his prime guard who's been a locker room cancer everywhere he goes. I normally like to be optimistic about teams, especially one that has gone through such a major change so early in the season, but I'm already completely out on this team. The Kings are desperately missing De'Aaron Fox, so much so that they've dropped 2 games in a row to the Rockets. but what's been evident so far through the season is that the Kings should have made a move in the offseason. Every team in the West got better except the Kings, and through 2 weeks, it just looks like they can't keep up with the top of the West star power. I will give the Kings some slack, as we won't see this team at its full power for a little while longer until Fox recovers, but they need to float around 500 before Fox comes back. The Cavaliers have been in a similar boat as the Kings, as Darius Garland and Jarrett Allen have both missed some time, so I'll give them some slack, but I'm a little concerned with Evan Mobley because I don't know if he'll progress more than a 14-10 guy, and I still don't know what's next for Donovan Mitchell and his future with Cleveland. We're finally going to see this team fully healthy, so I'm expecting more wins from this point on. But I do know that if the Cavs keep struggling, I could see Mitchell being moved before the start of next season. I'm not going to overreact too much about the Heat's abysmal start to the regular season, as we saw a bad start to the season last year as well. But without Gabe Vincent and Max Strus, I don't know how this team can recover from being a play-in team like last season, especially with the top of the East getting better. And while getting 3 straight wins has brought them from a team near the bottom to a team in the middle of the pack, losing Hero for a couple of weeks will hurt this team's positioning. And finally, the Knicks have a serious Julius Randle problem, one that probably won't be fixed until he's off the team. But on the bright side, RJ Barrett looks comfortable in the third option role, and their role players have been stepping up when needed. Before the season, I was all for a Cat/Donovan Mitchell trade to New York, but the Timberwolves have completely outperformed my expectations, and Julius Randle, some role players, and some picks may not even be enough for Donovan Mitchell at this point. There's still a lot of time for this Knicks team, and it's not time to hit the panic button just yet, but it's fair to keep watch on disgruntled stars around the league so you can dump Randle off. Next is the "it's going well for now, but I'm slightly concerned" tier, which consists of the Pelicans and the Hawks. Both teams have major concerns for their stars. For the Pelicans, it's Zion's and honestly the overall team's health, and for the Hawks, it's Trae Young's inconsistency. Both teams have a solid supporting cast that can pick up some of the slack, and the ability to be either really, really good or really bad. The Pelicans are also a team like the Nets, who are going to beat up on the bad teams and struggle against the good teams, especially if they continue to struggle with injuries. I'm glad Jordan Hawkins has been showing out so far because he's adding that solid 3-point shooter the Pelicans have needed, but there's too many concerns with this team for me to put them in a higher tier than this one. As for the Hawks, they're finally winning some games after a rough first week, but shockingly enough, it's almost completely in spite of Trae Young. Young has been abysmal through the first 2 weeks of the season, and it's almost gotten to the point where you would need to completely revamp Young's game, because defenses are just reading his next moves with ease. I will say that Onyeka Okongwu and Jalen Johnson are finally showing out and proving that they're going to be a part of the long-term future for this team, but I'm extremely concerned with how this team will perform in a 7-game series when their stars are going to be under a microscope. Both of these teams are probably going to thrive in the regular season, but struggle in the postseason. The next tier is the "I'm pleasantly surprised and happy to watch all these teams play" tier, which consists of the Pacers, Thunder, and Timberwolves. All 3 of these teams have young, exciting stars that can lead their respective teams to a win on any given night. The Pacers have surrounded Tyrese Haliburton, who's averaging a 24-12 so far, with great shot takers and 3-point shooters. But surprisingly, this is all happening with Benedict Mathurin having a subpar start to the season. So when Mathurin starts getting hot, and the role players are still hitting their shots, I don't see many teams in the league being able to stop this Pacers team. I give complete credit to the Pacers front office, because they turned a team that was a first-round exit every year to a team that has the potential to make a run in the playoffs within the next 3 seasons. As for the Thunder, we all kinda expected this jump, but we didn't expect Josh Giddey to struggle during this jump, because despite Giddey's poor play to start the season, the Thunder still sit at 5th in the West with wins over the Cavs twice and the Hawks. While I don't think this team is ready to make a run in the playoffs just yet, I think it's fair to say that they will finish as a top 8 seed, especially if Shea keeps up this level of play. The surprise team of the season for me is the Timberwolves. I'll be honest, I wasn't too high on Minnesota coming into the season. I was concerned with how their big man duo would work, and I was really concerned with how their depth would fare against the rest of the conference. But what I didn't factor in was the Anthony Edwards experience, where he can go off for 40 on any given night and play really solid defense when it matters. And I never thought Rudy Gobert would return to his DPOY level of play, but here we are. And suddenly the Timberwolves are 5-2 with wins over the Celtics and Nuggets despite Cat playing terribly. I'm interested to see how this team plays over the remainder of the regular season, but from what I've seen so far, they might be a legit contender in the West. Up next is the I don't know what this team is, and I don't know if I ever will tier, and of course, the only team in this tier is the Phoenix Suns. We've seen the Suns win some close games and get a great win over the Warriors on opening night, but we still haven't seen this team fully healthy, and I don't know if we will for more than 20 to 30 games. All three of the Suns' stars have been out for an extended period of time twice over the past 2 seasons. When it comes to the playoffs, while we know this team can pose a threat to the top of the West, can they? Will they be fully healthy? As much as I want to see them succeed, I can't really trust this team, and that's why they're a tier below all the rest of the contenders. Next up is the there's one thing holding you back from being contender tier, where the Mavericks, Warriors, and Bucks sit. The Mavericks have had a hot start to the season, going 6-2 because of Luka's electric play, but in their game against the Raptors, they reminded the world why this team isn't a contender. Because when the Mavs play a team with defensive versatility who can guard, or at least contain Luka and Kyrie, what other player on the Mavs can step up offensively? And is it concerning that Tim Hardaway Jr. is your third scoring option? Let me answer that for you. It is absolutely 100% concerning that Tim Hardaway Jr. may be your only hope in a playoff game. So until they fix that depth problem, I can't take them seriously as a contender. As for the Warriors, I just don't think this team will be able to hold up against the rest of the contenders. We saw it in last year's playoffs when they got dominated by the Lakers, and we've seen it this season with losses to the Cavs, Nuggets, and Suns. The addition of Chris Paul has been fantastic for this team, as their bench unit is actually a net positive for the first time in years. But can you trust his health in the playoffs? And when it comes to stopping the Jamal Murrays of the world, who's going to be doing that on this team? I just don't see a world where the Warriors, despite looking much better this season than last, make a run in the playoffs. And while the Bucks have that powerful duo of Giannis and Dame, I haven't seen anything this season that shows me they deserve to be title contenders. I understand that there's still a feeling out period, and that Middleton is only now starting to play real starter minutes. But I can't trust a team that gives up 130 points a game to teams that are clearly less talented than them. And even when Dame is out and Giannis scores 50, the Bucks still lose to a team like the Pacers. While I don't think this is the final version of this squad we see in May, their start to the season has been just a little too concerning for me to put them in the last tier. And finally, let's talk about the last tier, which is the teams that I could see winning a title tier, and the 3 teams in that tier are the Nuggets, the 76ers, and the Celtics. The only team in the West I can see making the NBA Finals at this point in the season are the Denver Nuggets. I've already talked about the Nuggets in my previous videos, so I won't dive too deep into this team. Just know that I'm completely in on the Nuggets repeating, solely because Jokic is the best player in the world, and the supporting cast around him perfectly complements his game. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. We are officially in the Jokic era, and unless someone can dethrone him in the NBA Finals, he is the best player in the league. As for Jokic's quote-unquote rival, Joel Embiid has looked sharp to start this season, leading the 76ers alongside Tyrese Maxey to a 6-1 record. And I love this new version of Embiid, one that's showing a lot more effort on both sides of the ball and evolving as a playmaker. He just looks a lot more loose on the court after the Harden trade, and that's also helped by Tyrese Maxey being the ultimate second option and bucket getter. I wasn't much of a believer in the Sixers before the season, only because the Harden drama was still looming over this team, and I wasn't sure if it would end. But I'm now fully into this team, in the regular season at least, and can't wait to see this team in May. But my favorite to make the NBA Finals in the East is still the Boston Celtics. There are definitely some depth issues and some coaching issues with this team, but their starting 5 is still the best in the league. And that's the thing that will propel this team above others in the playoffs, because you can chalk up a Joe Mazzulla-based loss and a depth-based loss in this series, but any of the Celtics starters can still go off for 30 on any given night. Combine that with the addition of defensive star Jrue Holiday, and I think they're going to be the toughest team to beat out east. But my question to you is, who are the real contenders? Comment below your NBA title contenders, and make sure to subscribe for more NBA videos just like this one. I'm Julian with TalkBackSports, and I'll see you next time.